Great. So we have about 7 minutes left. And so I'd like to go around rather briefly and ask everyone to just give about a minute or so, maybe highlights of what happened in the conversation or any kind of, concluding comments. So let's see, I think the Spanish language group, they're ready. So Bridget.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a small group, me and the colleagues from El Salvador. So we talked about a few things. And I think one thing that we got to talk about that was really important was about the role of international organizations, how to create transparency and accountability among international organizations that are working to promote locally led development. We talked about kind of the high NICRA rates that come from international organizations that really eat up a lot of these grants that are supposed to be locally led. So how do we reimagine our role? Speaking as myself from Partners Global. We also talked about organizational culture and kind of how two organizations can create cultures of trust and mutual support, and really how to kind of work together from that space of trusting and of true collaboration between international and local organizations. The final thing we talked about is just maybe some feedback for USAID specifically, about co-creation sessions. So we were recently in a co-creation session. The topic was gender related, and there was not a single local organization that was woman focused in the co-creation. So I think when we're trying to really promote local leadership, that's something that we need to make sure doesn't happen again. So it was a great session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Bridget. Let's pop over to Alex with the Russian group.
Yeah, we also had a very an active conversation, a small group, but really great insights from the ground. So I'm going to give you a few highlights which sort of reinforced a few of the points that were made during the session. So one is that which was really sort of I think I'm going to say it was a very insightful comment from our colleague Tajika from Kyrgyzstan. So she said that one of the biggest challenges in even entering the USA door for local organizations is that the way local organizations contextualize and present issues and programs is very different than how a US-based organization would do it. And so what that does, it creates an imbalance where the side or the partner that knows what's happening and what should be done is not necessarily talking to the partner that's actually winning the award, right? And so there is always this sort of mismatch of what is needed and what is being done. And so trying to figure out how to bridge that would be an important one. Trying to, and then, on the capacity front, having sort of, I don't want to put words in Tajika's mouth, but sort of a system, I'm going to call it, a way to deliver the capacity, administrative capacity for local organizations to do the work that they're doing while not necessarily burdening them with having to build all these systems internally that they're never going to use if they're not doing USAID programming, right? And so having a way to sort of create a hub or create a system that helps many organizations to do this work where they can focus on the work and someone else can deal with the administrative burden of running these programs. And then we had comments from our colleague Gulbahor who's from Uzbekistan, but is currently working in Tajikistan on transitioning. So she used an example of her experience of doing citizen security programs with the police right now. And over the last 2 years, all of a sudden the focus switching to necessarily humanitarian and COVID-related services, and the ability of a local organization to do sort of that whiplash, back and forth is quite difficult. And so figuring out a way where the project that was being done by the local organization was actually a good one because they could use the police system to deliver this, but doing it in a way that makes sense for the organization would be good. So I'll stop there.
Great, thanks very much, Alex. Let's see, Rasha.
Thank you, Kira. I was really curious to see what's happening in other groups. So with this brief, I feel my curiosity was fed. So thank you guys for the brief. We also had a small group and we talked we were from the Middle East and North Africa, and we had someone also joining from the States. To start with, we all acknowledge the efforts that the US government is putting to localize and move things to the local level. But yet we felt as a group that there was some disconnect between what's the vision, what's the aim, what's the goal with what's happening on the ground. So we thought that there could be some ways to just pause, reflect, and look into what are the lessons learned, look into what's working for other donors. And we brought up in the conversation like European donors, like as an example to how they do these approaches. Another point that we mentioned is related to this is, and I think Bridget, that's what you're also referring to, like the prototype and the co-design and all of this, and the importance of it for sure to give some insights to how to move on this. The second conversation was also about how the importance of the work versus the impact of it on ground. And there was a sense in the group that there's more importance from the US funds and the US government fund to go towards the implementation, the local partners, what's happening on ground, rather than really focusing on what's the meal approach. And even that we fill it out, we discuss it, but yet the real impact on ground, we felt that other donors look at it in a different way than the US, which we think has a major impact on how the US funding is perceived, and some US agencies is perceived as a donor in our region, and how some local organizations prefers funds from the Europeans over the US for some of these issues. So I think that's a quick brief for the discussion.
Thanks, Rasha. I just want to note that we're at 12:15, but I'd like invite everyone to stay if they can a couple more minutes. If you need to leave, please see there's a Google form in the chat. We would like to stay in touch. We will have a mechanism for more input and to get more of your perspectives. We want to collect those over the next week or two, and we'll be in touch with you proactively. So please let us know how we can reach you. Okay, so turn over to Deborah now.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I know you all want to go to lunch, so I'll be very brief. Our group was also very, very small. We were lucky to have one representative from Peace Direct, really, and that was it. So we had a very intimate discussion. I say the 3 points were, we got a very interesting perspective on how the Europeans view the localization and how that differs from the US, and what current tensions are in the European approach, and to what extent the US could possibly or maybe not serve as a model, and so in what way. So that was very interesting. Then the second point was around transparency. The need to be more transparent about how much funding donors send to local organizations, but also funding transparencies for international organizations and NGOs to be more, specific about how much do they actually give to the locals from what they're getting. And the idea of increasing the baseline funds that channel the funds directly to local organizations. And then I think the last point was the role of intermediaries like Partners Global or Peace Direct, and discussing some of the challenges and best practices that we're hoping to establish in giving more ownership to locals. Yes, so that was it.
Thank you, Deborah. And last but not least, last but most, I think you had all of the participants in your group, Sia.
Thank you very much, But so what I'll do, I'll kick off, and I'm going to ask Rosalie to come in and help me as well within that. But just, I think, quite insightful for me, what came out was two perspectives that were given about language. First, connected to Alex's discussion, the perspectives around language promoting the we against them with the use of the term local. So already creating that environment of almost conflict to a certain extent, with the use of language already dictating that there was a higher level of capacity to a lower level of capacity. And also language from the perspective of language shaping needs. So depending on what funding was available, the donor basically dictating needs of the people, and everybody jumping on board to shape their interventions according to those needs, instead of the needs being shaped by the actual input from citizens themselves. So I'll hand over to Rosalie to give a little bit more on that.
Thank you, Sia. And just thank you to everyone. It was a large group, and I know we didn't get to everyone, so we'll try to catch the comments. I think just to round out what was said, you know, there was an interesting additional nuance that hasn't been stated yet, which is about the distinction of locally, you know, when we're talking about locally led can mean a lot of different things, and there are chasms within locally led. So the example was given that even when you're saying it's using the word local, if you're talking about a organization based in country X where there's donor funding, it tends to be that the well-resourced groups, as we know, are in a capital city, largely having white faces at their lead, and also previous recipients, right? So then what happens to those other local community groups that are either rural or maybe lack a language capacity, but are completely professional in the work that they're doing? So I think that when we're talking locally led development, what the group on our call, our group was saying is, it's not so simple, and we need to look at the layers within what we mean, looking at changing the lexicon. So that was one piece I wanted to add. And then also, there are a lot of resources that are out there that were shared in our group that we will put into the notes as we're circulating them. And then another person really mentioned that there's a lot of criticism of what we can improve, but that there are also US government and other government programs that have tried to actually live these new values or really amplify these values, like Local Works program. So one of the suggestions was to empower what's happening on the ground. We actually have to also raise sort of the visibility of those programs that donors are implementing, which are attempting to work a little bit differently and really take local voices, community voices, leadership, tribal leadership, and other leaders in the communities at heart. So yeah, I hope that that captured the other pieces that were really highlighted in the group. And if there's anyone else in that group, one of the quotes that was stated was, intelligence isn't based on capital, it's based on human capital. So I think that that's the message, is the human capital on the ground is the capital that our donors need to be hearing.
Great, thank you, Rosalie. So I think, Bridget, do we still have time for our poll, and we'll take it out?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for sticking around. We're just about to wrap. We've got some inputs, final inputs that we want from you all.
All right, it should be running now. All right, everybody's got it. Great. Well, while folks go ahead and fill that out, just reminding you again, there's a link in the chat to a Google form where we'll collect your email addresses and be back in touch with the outputs of the session. We'll share the notes and the resources that Rosalie mentioned. So I think we're all set on the administrative side. Kira, if you want to close us out.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We had a really great group, and we appreciate your, all your inputs and your dedication to the work that you're doing. And we hope to just continue the conversation and really make our voices heard in the halls of Congress and at USAID and other donors as well. So thank you, and have a great rest of the afternoon.